Hello everybody, it's Fossil Bill here. It's time to do the walkthrough on how to make the sound reducing cover for the TV-5. You'd probably just need to improvise it for the other vibratory tumblers, but it's mainly for the TV-5 tumbler the way I have it set up. So here's what you're going to need. You're going to need an 8-inch round acrylic sheet, disc of acrylic, one 12 by 12 sheet of 1/8 of an inch thick rubber, one utility knife, one drawing compass. You will need a black Sharpie and a silver Sharpie. This is a pill bottle lid, medication bottle lid. It is about 1 7/8 inch diameter, and I will be using that for the rubber part for the center. You will need a 1/4 inch drill and a drill to drill with. You will need a stirrer for the acrylic resin. You will need a 2-part epoxy resin. I'm using craft resin because I have it also. I'm going to be mixing it for another project that I'm going to be doing a video on alongside this. So that's coming up too. You will also need a small paintbrush and a container to either measure or just to mix the epoxy resin in. I have 2 amounts in here because I've been using them measured. They're exactly the same amount, so I'm just going to be pouring them in. You will not need this much for your project. I'm just mixing them together because they're a measured amount, and I'm going to be using the main amount of that for the other project alongside this. So first off, oh yeah, and did I say one large plastic cutting board to cut on, because you will not want to cut on your countertops. So let's get started. First thing I'm going to do is I am going to adjust my phone here so that it is showing just what it needs to show, and get started. I'm going to take the acrylic disc and the drawing compass. It is set up to 4 inches, which is half of the distance for the acrylic, and that way I can just set it up at the edge and draw an arc from the edge from a few points and get an intersection. That didn't do good. It moved. Okay, that's where it is there. Of where roughly center will be. So I'm going to drill right in the center of that mark, and that is the center of the piece. Since I set up at the edge, there was a little bit of extra space, so it still is center right there. I'm going to do the drilling over the trash can, so I will be right back. Okay, now we have our hole. It's just a touch off, but that's okay. Our bowl is just a little bit under 8 inches, so we have a little bit of wiggle room at the edge. So now, what we do is we open up our rubber sheet. I found that it is easier and less expensive to get the 12 by 12 inch sheet than it is to get a smaller more accurately sized sheet of the black rubber. Now what we will be doing is we will be cutting a disc out of it using this as a template, just cutting around it, and then we will be using the two Sharpies to cut cut it basically into a washer that will fit around the outer edge, but it will still cover a portion of the acrylic. So it will act as a gasket. And you'll want to make sure you have a brand new utility blade in your utility knife, because it will make it so much easier to cut this out. And there we have it. Now you see I have a little bit of overage there, so I'm just going to trim that back. And there it is. One round piece of 1/8 of an inch rubber sheet. Now what I do with the two Sharpies, I keep the lid on the black Sharpie. And I just basically use it as a stylus. I'm using the distance between the two Sharpies to draw a line. And that's going to be the width of our gasket. Going around the outer edge. So there we go, we have the outline there. And I'm just going to take this and put it somewhere in the middle. It doesn't have to be dead center. As a matter of fact, if you put it towards the edge, you can get more out of the interior if you use it for another project. You will have less waste material that way. And this piece is going to get a hole out of the center of it, and it's going to go in the center for the center seal. As a matter of fact, now that I look at that, that's a bit too big. So I'm going to go get a different lid and trace a different circle on that. So that's just going to be ignored, that one. So I'll be right back. Okay, here's a medicine ball that's about 1.25 inches in diameter. I'm going to use that one instead. And of course, obvious statement here, the reason why I'm using a silver Sharpie is because the black Sharpie will not show up on the black rubber. There we go. That's much better. And that will be the seal to go around the center post. So here we go. And this does not have to be perfectly round. You just want to make sure that it has enough width that it will seal. I'm going to do this one first. Also, the hole in the center of this one does not 100% need to be round. It just needs to be big enough for the center post to go into. And it does not have to be as small as the center post either, because it will seal to the top of the bowl. So there we go, that is done. So that will just mount right to there when we are done with peeling that off and scoring the surface of the acrylic so that it will bond. Now here we go here. As you can see, my blade is nice and sharp, so it is just cutting through it like butter. And there we are. There's the extra. There's the two pieces we're going to use in the next step. And now it's time to peel the surface on this. I'll start where it just had a little. So the acrylic comes in a pack of 2. So what I'm doing is I have one of these already. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to designate one of them as a phase 2 lid and one as a phase 3 lid. And then I have an actual bowl with a lid for polish, which I'm going to stick some weather stripping to in order to deaden the sound on that one when I get a chance to go out to the hardware store and I'm thinking about it. But here we go. Now I'm going to take this, place it over the center hole. go with the black Sharpie and go around it. You can see it's not really round, but the only purpose of doing that is now I'm going to go and I am going to just lightly score with the utility knife. To make sure there's a rough enough surface for the acrylic resin to bond to. Because if it doesn't have a rough enough surface, it might just pop off. And I want to avoid that. Now when I set this up before with the other one, I used UV cure resin, and the UV resin did not penetrate well through the acrylic, so I had an issue with it bonding and curing. Because of that. So this time I'm using one that'll take, you know, about 8 hours to cure to the point where it's able to be moved. And then by tomorrow, when it's time to change over the vibratory tumbler, I'll be able to use the new lid with the phase 3 grit. Okay, there we go. The scoring's done. Now I'm going to mix up my resins. Trying to get every last bit out. Okay. Now to stir them up. You can see it still looks a little bit milky in there and ribbony, so I'm going to give it a nice stir. Okay, it's starting to look good and equal, so I'm gonna just go ahead and dip my brush in and get a little bit on the brush. Okay. There we go. Put that on there. Get it down nice and good. Okay, now to go around the outer edge. Okay, there we go. Now time to stick this down. And there we go. Now when you put this on, you just put it over the mandrel, the rod in the center, and you just crank it down. There's no need to put a bolt on or a washer on top of the bowl, and you just crank it down until you can't crank it any further, and it will tone down that sound to almost, you know, to just what I showed you on the video on noise level. it seals the noise in pretty darn well. So there it is. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope this helps everyone keep their noise down and contained. And keep those rocks rolling and churning.